Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is CJ. Welcome back, episode 12 of the Innovative Marine 75 EXT Reef build. Now, if you're not a subscriber yet, or you stumbled across this video per YouTube recommendations, feel free to go back and check out the full build playlist, episodes 1 through 11, from the unboxing, plumbing, aquascaping, everything up until this point. Go back and get caught up. But this episode, we're going to focus on aquarium monitoring and testing. So let's jump to it. So for those that missed the quick preview last update, I did unbox and get this installed on the system. And it's been running for a few weeks now, and it's finally time to kind of cover at least my plans on monitoring the system and what I've noticed different on this version of the Neptune Apex. Now keep in mind, I've used this on my 120 gallon build years ago and my JBJ 65 gallon build years ago. So 3 years removed from the hobby, what's new, what's changed. I was really curious to see as I opened this package. So, the main base unit, it looks very similar to what was there before. And I did make a change as far as the probes. They no longer include the salinity probe. You get your ORP, the temperature, and you get the pH. So the EB8, the base unit, still looks the same as far as the most part. 8 outlets, USBs on the side, a few different options. But overall, the only thing different that I really noticed with this is going to be including the fluid level sensor, which was not there the first time around. I believe they had different versions of it. This one's a little different. Kind of looks like a measuring stick, but it also includes a leak detector as well. So it looks like they exchanged a couple, items for salinity probes and different things that come with the base unit. But of course, everything is expandable. So, this is just the beginning stages of being able to monitor the tank. We can always add additional things via Neptune as far as auto feeders, tridents, wave makers, lights. It's all kinds of things you can kind of grow this into, at least grow it into what you need. Now, one thing that did not include was going to be a mount to hold the probes. So, fortunately, I already had one for Innovative Marine, and it's kind of been in the closet waiting for this day. So it's time to be great and use this to mount all my probes inside the sump. Now, unfortunately, I did not get to screen grab and record the setup because it was so damn quick. And by that, I'm talking about very simple. Beyond powering up the EB8, the power bar, and hooking up the head unit, downloading the Neptune app, the Fusion app, and then literally just following the instructions on the app. So, it's all in one place. You don't have to go looking for it. It's very easy and simple to install. One thing I will say, if you're new to Apex, just keep in mind they have the outlets labeled specifically for skimmers, wave makers, lights, heaters. So as long as you coordinate the outlet with your equipment, from the beginning, makes the setup a lot easier. You don't have to customize things as much. But in my case, I already had an old account with Fusion, so I just signed in and it pretty much loaded all my old information. So I had to go through a little more of a, manual setup. But other than that, pretty straightforward, guys. Now, before we get too far, I want to take a step back and share my process testing the tank with my Hannah checkers. Now, as you see, the 3 valves here. I'm using the sump area because this is mostly clean, particulate-free water. I don't want to suck up a copepod or a piece of food floating from the main display, putting in my test valve, right? The second thing, I always rinse them out with tank water to remove any debris or whatever may be of dried up, from being in storage. And the third thing is I never dip these in salt water to fill them up. I feel like anything you put on the outer surface of this test valve is a potential contaminant or something that can throw your test off, something else you have to clean off. So try to keep my hands clean for the minimal time I'm touching them to avoid that. Now, something I want to mention is going to be the test packets, especially the powder packets. Besides flicking and making sure the powder is in the bottom of the package itself, you want to cut this in a way and make sure that you create a funnel, so to speak. You can do this with the packet, and it makes it super easy to pour that powder into the test valves. Don't turn it sideways and try to, pour it in there. Make the funnel and it'll go right into it and just make it super easy, right? So besides doing that, in an effort to keep this as sterile and as clean as possible. I never touch the valves again. Once they're full, it's always a microfiber cloth, wiping them off, making sure they're good and clean for the initial start of the test. And then once it comes time to fill the valves with the powder or fluids or whatever comes with the test kits, I always hold the valve with the microfiber cloth, shake it up with it, and just make sure that there is zero chance for any smudges to be on this glass. I figure any of those smudges will throw off the reading, will throw off the sensors inside the Hannah checker, and I feel like it just won't be as accurate of a result. So, once you do all those things, hitting the button is the last thing you have to do. Just make sure you hold it down to initiate the timer. Notice the nitrate checker is the longest one. It takes 7 minutes. So in order to kind of get the results all at the same time, I start with the longest checker first, which is the nitrate. So once that 7-minute clock starts, then the game is on to get everything else done in time, so all the results are done. So big part of that is making sure you have all your valves filled at the same time with the water from the tank. You don't want to have to be going back and forth with the clock ticking. And then you can just kind of move on step by step. It's like cooking a meal. You want to start with the meat in the oven and then cook the sides later. So that way you got a nice hot plate at the same time, right? So that's pretty much my process with checking, at least with these 3 checkers. I have not done the calcium one yet, and honestly, that's not one I do very often. But these 3 I feel like are going to be the most consistent numbers, especially the alkalinity, which is the faster of the all 3 tests. So it's an instant result. So that's definitely the one that I'll be doing more daily. But tracking your nutrients in your system is important. And for me, with this being a newer tank and basically having no nutrients at the beginning stages, it was very important to track this. And this also goes into the Apex system, which is why I want to show you guys this, because the Apex does have a way of tracking your parameters and graphing it, which I will share with you all later in the video. So as you can see, numbers are super low, but through Apex graphing, we're going to be able to see trends and consistency and, with correlating into water changes, notes, all that good stuff. So I just wanted to share that with you all. Hopefully you picked up a tip or trick if it helped you. If not, we're going to keep it moving. So I'm going to give you guys a quick look at my current configuration on the Neptune Apex. Now, once again, I've already kind of had this set up for a couple of weeks at this point, and I did use all of the standard outlets. I plugged up my skimmer into the skimmer outlet, heater into the heater outlet, and so on and so forth. I believe they have them labeled that way due to those outlets being able to turn off and on a certain way or more efficiently, but I don't believe you have to use them that way. So someone can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but that's just the way I've always done it. If they have it labeled that way, why not use it, right? So besides that, this is pretty much replacing the need for me using that 8 outlet, DJ power strip that I used to have on the tank, and that I had to open the cabinet and flick the switches. And remember, I had the switch turned off, and having to be home to do the whole thing. This eliminated the need for all of that, which is fantastic. With this being able to be controlled remotely, as long as the Wi-Fi is working in my house and the Wi-Fi is working on my device, then I'll always be able to relink to Apex Fusion and be able to turn off lights, pumps, skimmers, wave makers, so on and so forth. Let's say my son called me and said, hey, an anemone's getting sucked into the power head, and I'm able to log in wherever I am and turn that off. So the beauty of it, besides being able to turn the switches off, is being able to tell it what to do when certain things are turned off. So let's say my return pump turns off. I now have this set up to kill the skimmer, the algae scrubber, to kill anything else that was relying on the return pump to be working, and then turn those things back on in a specific order, a specific time, pretty much like if I was doing it myself. If I was doing a water change, what things do I need to turn off? When I turn the water back on, I don't want my skimmer to overflood, so let's set the Apex to turn it on after a certain time, or have it set to turn it on after the water level is at a certain level. So it pretty much just makes life a little easier, makes you a little lazier, I will say, but it also just lets you be able to enjoy your tank a little more peaceful, right? It kind of saves you from getting things yourself. So when I mentioned earlier, as far as fluid sensor, this is going to be it. This is a pretty neat piece of equipment, I must say. After learning how to do it and getting it calibrated, it actually monitors whatever water level you put it in. In my case, I chose to put it in the sump for two reasons. One, it's going to give me protection over the skimmer overflowing, so I can kill the skimmer's power if the water level in the sump raises high enough to make the skimmer flood. And two, if there's any issues with the idle top off, this is going to let me know. If the idle top off failed and the sump's draining too low, it's going to alert me. If the idle top off is stuck on or trying to flood everything, it's going to actually go and kill the idle top off and then alert me. So that is the primary uses I'm using for the fluid sensor. Now, as far as the probes, the best place I found to put them, at least in this Nuvo 27 sump, is going to be in the middle compartment. I found a nice little tight spot right behind the algae scrubber. And I must admit, I am running out of room in the sump currently. So I'm finding every little nook and cranny I can to place sensors. The most important part was just making sure that the temperature sensor was not in the same compartment as the Helios heater. I pretty much have the Helios heater sensor in the first chamber, have the apex in the second chamber, and then the heater in the third chamber, which hopefully will prevent any overheating issues and give me accurate results. Now, I will tell you the temperature is off by about a degree, so I'm not sure if the Helios is off or the apex is off, but they are about a degree difference between each other. And I'm thinking it's either because they're off or because that's the difference between the two chambers. But either way, that is pretty much how I have the equipment wired up. Everything else is kind of stuffed underneath the cabinet, and pretty much that's it. So let's keep it moving. So when it comes to the Apex, I am still kind of refamiliarizing myself with the language and the programming and the terminology, but I was pleasantly surprised to see they have a lot more automation built in for you. Meaning you can select the type of device you have, whether it's lights or a heater, so to speak, and they have pre-programmed thresholds in there for you. So if you didn't change anything, you would pretty much be okay. Whether your lights stay on or not, or whether your heater will, turn off or turn on at a minimum and maximum temperature. They kind of have standard settings in place for you to be able to plug and play. But if you want to go a little deeper, like for me, for example, I wanted my skimmer to be able to turn off if the fluid sensor read the water level over 7 inches. So for me, I went into the advanced settings, went to fall back off, meaning if the power is actually off on the unit, it's going to turn off the skimmer. So that way it's just not running. Or you can set it on when the power is on and then have it turn off after the water level gets to 7 inches. And then, once the return pump's off, it turns off. Once the return pump comes on, it comes on after a minute or so. So I'm just kind of sharing the picture of how my programming is in there so far. It's just a bunch of safety protocols, if you want to say. I have items being delayed after a minute, and a majority of the settings on my Apex are clearly dependent on the water level on my sump and or the return pump running. So I figure those are the two main factors that are going to matter, whether my skimmer overfloods or whether I end up with water on the floor or whether I end up heating the sump for no reason when there's no water going to the display. So I just try to think of any and all scenarios of different options that could happen on my reef tank. And I try to program them into place. Now, I know a lot of people believe that, hey, there's chance for failure and redundancy, no redundancy and those kind of things. And that is true, so to speak. But keep in mind, I have a Helios heater controller, which is absolutely fantastic. It's probably the best heater that I've ever used. And that's controlling the heat primarily. I have the Apex as a backup. You have the Innovative Marine Hydrofill, which I had concerns about being stuck on. Now I have an Apex babysitting and monitoring it to make sure that doesn't happen, right? So it's kind of a pros and cons to everything in the hobby and in life, so to speak. So you just kind of choose what fits you and your needs the best and kind of go from there. So As far as the automation goes, now one thing I do want to mention is going to be the testing. I did say that earlier in the video. HANA checkers are actually programmed into the Apex. You can select those as your test kit option, enter your results, and be able to plug it in and keep track of it, which is pretty awesome. And this is something that I've really loved taking advantage of. As you test your tank and you set your, plot points, you can actually go back through and see what those results were over time. And also, test results, pH. As you can see, in my system is still a little crazy. I'm still working at this situation, but it's just great being able to go back and see graphing over time. You can track trends. Hey, I shut the window that day, the pH took a nosedive. Open the window, it went up. What can I do to try to resolve that? What can I do to help, get more oxygen in my tank? My alkalinity took a nosedive. Oh, did my alkalinity go down because the corals consumed it? Oh, no, it didn't. That same day, my pH dropped. So, hey, my pH went lower, which dropped my alkalinity lower. So, instead of dosing the tank prematurely, I was able to correlate those things by using the Apex's graphs, charting, and being able to kind of keep track of what's going on in my system over time. Because let's be honest, who can remember what their test result was last week, last month, 2 months ago? When you did this, when you did that, I'm able to graph those items, add notes within the Apex, calendar reminders, all of those things. And I really feel like this is the hidden gem inside Fusion. Besides the automation for your tank, being able to track and graph everything, I feel like is the most powerful thing of all. So, besides the outlets being controlled by it, being able to go in and just, track your tank and do everything you can. Now, there was something also neat as the power management in here, being able to plug in the kilowatts cost, in your area and being able to see how much your tank costs you. You may not want to know that. It's probably something you don't want to tell your spouse if you have one, but it was pretty cool to know. I mean, there is still so much things and so many different settings and options in here that I have not explored yet. There's so much more equipment that I haven't explored yet, but for now, we have the basic setup on the Apex, and I'm able to continue and keep track of the tank. So I just want to kind of share that with you all as far as my basic plans for the Apex. But other than that, we still have a lot of room to grow. We still have a lot of equipment to add, and we still got more updates to do. So I think it's a pretty good stopping point for this video. Just kind of wanted to touch a little on the basic thoughts and feelings on the Apex system on my system. As you can tell, it goes pretty deep, and we can go deeper and deeper. So I think it's a good stopping point. But as always, hey, if you guys want exclusive content, always slide over to my Instagram. I do a lot more updates there. But as far as this tank goes, we got a ton of candy in here and a ton of fish and a ton to catch up on. So make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and you guys keep doing what y'all do. Y'all be easy, and I will catch you guys the next update. Peace.